Are you letting God mold you into the vision that He gives you? That's kind of the message today, and excuse me, it's starting because of a devotional that I read that was talking about it, but also looking at my life, and I kind of alluded to it a day or two ago as well about how God will show you things, and then you have to go through a lot of stuff. And I also posted a video about 2 days ago, and it was discussing how a guy I know moved here to Mexico from California, and some of the problems that Satan was putting him through. And so to pull it all together and hopefully keep it short, that's what happens. God gives you a vision or makes a point to you, and you know you need to do something. And even if you don't know God, like there was back in my days before I really knew God and was practicing my Catholicism, there was things that I knew in my mind and in my heart that were going to happen, like moving to Mexico. But I had no idea who God was, even though now I know He's the one that put them there. But the point is that He gives you a vision or whatever it is, and He has to make you into a place mentally and spiritually before He can fulfill the vision. And the problem is Satan comes in, and Satan doesn't want you to fulfill the vision, because he knows if you start going down that path and accepting the discipline that's being put into you as being okay, that the suffering you're going through, which is producing for you a glory that far outweighs it all, is okay and acceptable. You understand that it's God's way. And you understand that everything in this life is that way. You can't become successful in sales, in sports, in any business whatsoever unless you put in the effort. It's not about time necessarily, it's about the real effort. Understanding, coming to an understanding of what you need to do so you do it at the highest level and are successful. And that's what God's really after, is to get you and mold you and shape you into that man or woman you need to be to fulfill the vision that He's given you. And I look in my life, and I made the comment before, in my life, everything happens about 10 years after He shows me. Maybe with you it's a year or 6 months or whatever, but I'm a little bit slower than most, so what do you expect? But He shows you the vision, like with my son. It was 10 years ago that He showed me that I would have a son. And there's different things He's done to me. He showed me before that 10 years before I would adopt girls, or kids. He didn't say girls, and we did. And the point is that He has to get you to where you need to be so that you become the right kind of father or mother that's going to raise this child in the right way, the way He expects it to be, where you're completely yielded to Him. If He would have gave me a son 10 years ago, I wasn't completely yielded to Him. When we conceived Isaac and we were discussing names, there really wasn't much discussion. I said, we're going to call him Isaac Samuel. Isaac for Abraham's son, and Samuel because of the lady that said, God, if you give me a son, I'll give him back to you. And Samuel became a mighty prophet. And that's the point. I knew what his name was supposed to be, and I knew what the purpose was, and it's the same as the mother of Samuel. That this child is God's and to be used by God. I'm just here to enjoy him and raise him in the way that God expects me to. But that's the whole point about being molded and shaped and suffering into what it is you're supposed to be, and testing your faith. Because over those 10 years, not all of them were tests of faith, because, well, kind of. Cynthia and I have been together now 10 years, married 9 as of the 4th of July. And the point is, I knew she wanted a baby from the beginning, and it took that long. Thankfully, we didn't have to wait like Abraham. You don't want to have a kid at 65. But the point is that we had to be molded and shaped, and our faith had to be tested. Cynthia didn't have faith. she was like, oh, we're never going to have a kid. You're too old. The doctor said this, the doctor said that, and yada, yada, yada. And it's never going to happen. To which I always told her, yes, it will. God said, and it's going to happen. And it did. And it's going to be a boy. Because that's what God said. And so when the doctors, and I told this story before, but when the doctors came and said, you'll never get pregnant, watch us. And we did. And when the doctor said, well, this boy will probably never be born because he's got these sacks of blood on the placenta, or whatever it's called, the sac, I never lost faith. I was like, well, God didn't tell me he's going to give us a boy and take it from us. So he's going to be born. And he was. And then they're telling us we were too old. It's probably going to have defects of some sort. And they wanted to do testing, and I said, we don't need no testing. I said, whatever God gives me is fine, number one, but number two, he's not going to have any problems because God said. And it happened. If you have that kind of faith in God, and you allow him to put you through what you have to go through to achieve the vision, God will give it to you. And he molds you and shapes you and tests you in your faith to get you to that point. It's not an easy walk. Satan don't just let you go. And if you start believing Satan and you are like my wife was, and we're never going to get pregnant and this is never going to happen, it won't. Because your faith isn't in God. Your faith is in what the doctors are telling you and what Satan wants you to believe. We're not to trust Satan. He's a liar. He's a liar from the very beginning and a murderer. He wants to take your soul to hell with him. We have to get to the point where we overcome Satan, because the adversary, Satan, is always coming in and putting things in your head, trying to keep you from coming to the right wisdom. And I was talking with a client of mine, I have her listening right now, yesterday actually by email, and I was making some points to her very similar, where she's always in despair and depressed and everything, and she says it. And I'm always telling her, take your focus off of your things of the world and put them on God. And she's wealthy. She has a lot of property. She has a lot of things going on. And, I said, well, don't worry about your property. She said, well, it's not worry. It's the planning, or what was the word she used? I forget it now. But basically, the responsibility is the word she used, of managing these properties and taking care of stuff. I said, it's really the same. When you take your focus off of your assets and your things of the world and put it on God, everything else takes care of itself. The money you have is immaterial. You don't need it. You can live without it. I said, if God takes it away from me today, no problem. But I also told her, there's always a fight. I have the same fight. With what's going on with the coronavirus right now, and I finally accumulated some assets, and I don't want to see them go away. But if they do, they do. And there's nothing you can do about it, because in the end of times, the Antichrist will have it all. They'll make sure they have it all in one way or another, and there's nothing you can do about it. But also at the end of the day, if you have a place to sleep, Jesus did in the mountains. He never had a house. And food to eat, Jesus never planned for food. He always had it, though. People fed him, or he found fig trees or fish or whatever. What else do you really, really need? The rest is all just stuff. And the problem is that stuff is what makes us worry. That's a problem. We want it, and we accumulate it, and we want more, and we accumulate more. But all it does is make us more mentally sick and spiritually more separated from God. And I'm not saying you go out and sell everything and give it to the poor and follow Jesus. However, if he tells you to do that, you best do it. But the main point is to separate yourself from everything. Whatever you have to suffer. Oh, that's the other point she made. She said, I'm not worried about dying from the coronavirus. It's the suffering part that I don't want. To which I told her, in my life, my growth spiritually and mentally has always come from when I suffer, not when everything's great. And that's the point. We have to embrace suffering. It's going to happen. God gives you visions, and he immediately allows a testing to come, both from Satan and himself, just from him backing off and testing your patience. Patience is a huge thing too. I was talking with God yesterday, and I said, how important is patience for getting into the kingdom of heaven? And he said the very first word in the definition of love is patient. It's very important, probably the most important. Because if you're patient, then everything else comes into play. You can put up with people. If you're not patient, you can't put up with people. If they don't agree with you, you attack quickly. If they're doing something that you don't agree with, you attack quickly. That's the problem. You have to have patience. You have to have kindness. You have to not seek your own way. These are things that go completely against human nature. And therefore, human nature does not and cannot walk in the love of God. The churches try to make it like we can and like we are, that we, because they change the definition of love, like it's some emotion, like we're supposed to have this really emotional friendship with people and hug them and tell them how great they are and everything. But that's not the love of God. We've talked about that many times, but it's never too much to talk about. But when we walk in patience and we seek the will of God and we live through it, no matter what suffering he puts us through, then we come to the place where God can shape us into that vision and fulfill his promise to us. Are you willing to let him? That's the problem, because most people, they don't want to suffer. You look at this virus, it's a perfect example. Right now, a lot of people are getting it, and very few are dying from it, because it's just the way these bugs and viruses work. When they first come in, a lot of people die because the very sick people get them first, and it's just too much for them, and they die. But then as it keeps going through the system, the healthier ones are getting it. And the other aspect is there's a lot of people that already got this virus and either don't know it or they know it and they've never been tested. I've talked to so many people, and I just had one Saturday say the same exact thing, that, yeah, we're pretty sure we had it too back in January when we took this trip to Costa Rica. I would say when I bring it up that probably half of the people I talk to answer and say, yeah, I think we had it already too. But they don't know because they've never been tested, so they're not showing up on the statistics. But the point is that with fear, these people, the CDC and the government and everybody, are just putting this fear in people that, oh, it's on the rise again, everybody's going to die, we need to lock down again. And they start closing stores and things in California or wherever you are. And it's based on fear. Because when you look, very few people right now are dying from it. The number of people dying are going down significantly, even though the number of cases is going up. And the number of cases of critical is going down as the number of cases go up. And so is it really necessary? The short answer is no. But why do we do it? Because of fear. Nobody wants to suffer. That's why nobody comes to know God for real, because the church system is telling you, no, we're not going to let you suffer. We're going to help you through this, and we're going to tell you how great you are and try to make you feel better. And it goes completely against what God wants. That's the problem. They think they're doing right, but they're really cheating you. And they're following their God Satan, who is a liar, again, because that's what they want to believe. As God said through Paul, I'll send the great deception and they'll believe the lie. It's sad, but they do. And I did for 45 years and never understood things until God really got a hold of me, and it was through severe suffering, having everything taken away from me, that really made me seek truth and find God. Not because like what I'm going through right now, where everybody else is suffering, and here I am, like, isolated, like, because I obeyed God, moved here 10 years earlier. There's my 10-year thing again, and all hell's breaking loose in the United States, and I'm sitting here making a lot of sales and closing a lot of things, and we have no problems whatsoever, not one. And everybody else has major problems. Not everybody, but a lot of people. And the point is I went through the suffering, I accepted it, and I grew from it and learned what God wanted me to learn. And then he moved me to Mexico. And then he gave me the kids to adopt, and then he gave me my son, etc. That's the point. Allow the suffering to come, and don't try to get out of it. If you try to get out of it, you'll find a way out. Maybe it's with drugs or alcohol or other people telling you what you want to hear, but you'll never learn your lesson, and you'll never grow from it, and you'll remain fearful all your life, and you'll remain without the true peace of God, because you won't have salvation. The main thing God's after at the end of it all is your salvation, working into you what you need to work out. And if you're not allowing the suffering to come into your life, you're not working in or letting God work into you what you need to work out, and you're not working out. You're pushing it away, you're ignoring it, and you're going the other direction. And you can't do that and be right with God, no matter how many sinner prayers you say, or no matter how many altar calls you make, or no matter how much money you give to the church or to the needy or whatever. You're not working out what God's working in. That's all God wants. And then when you do, he'll tell you who to give money to and where to go and what to do and what to say to whom and when and why. It's got really long, as always, sorry. As always, seek first the kingdom of God and its righteousness, and then everything else will be given to you. Peace.